The woman is clearly a sharpshooting assassin, but in front of her boyfriend, she pretends to be a rookie who can't use a gun. Her boyfriend, Pitt, gives a smug smile, picks up the air rifle, and begins to show off his marksmanship as he accurately hits target after target. The proud Pitt boasts that he's just lucky. His showboating instantly ignites Jolie's competitive spirit. Without a word, she raises the air rifle again. In the blink of an eye, she accurately hits every single target. Pitt is instantly left dumbfounded. He curiously asks his girlfriend where she learned to shoot. At this point, Pitt has no idea that his sexy and charming girlfriend is also a top-tier assassin, just like him. Just a few months earlier, Pitt was in a hotel in Colombia waiting for his assassination target. Suddenly, he heard a gunshot. Then, a large group of FBI agents stormed the hotel and began questioning guests who were staying alone. Pitt being by himself was quickly noticed. Just then, Jolie rushed into the hotel lobby. A few FBI agents stopped her for questioning. She gave Pitt a meaningful glance. Their eyes met, and they instantly understood each other. Pitt quickly hid the gun on his hip, and the two pretended to be a couple and hastily left. That was their first meeting. Having narrowly escaped death, the two went to a bar to celebrate, although neither knew the other's background. Under the influence of alcohol, the lone man and woman quickly ended up in an embrace. After a night of passion, Jolie woke from her sleep to find the other side of the bed empty. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed and lonely. But the next second, Pitt returned to the room. It turned out he had gone to get breakfast. Jolie put on the flower Pitt brought back. The two were now together. They knew that in each other, they had found the soulmate they had always been searching for. Soon, they had their wedding. One would think this handsome couple would have a perfect marriage. However, a few years later, as the novelty and passion slowly faded, their married life entered a phase as bland as water. Every day, Pitt would come home punctually before 7, put on his ring before entering the door, and then wipe the blood stains from his collar. His wife would have a lavish dinner prepared, and they would make small talk. After dinner, Jolie would show him the new curtains she had picked out. That night, Jolie, having received a last-minute mission, changed into all black. She told Pitt she had to go back to the office to handle some business. Pitt, used to it, didn't ask any questions. But unexpectedly, as soon as Jolie drove away, Pitt also left the house. Jolie arrived at the entrance of a high-end club. After passing a security check, she was led into a room. Then, a man in a bathrobe walked out of the bathroom. Jolie took off her clothes in front of the strange man. Then she took him home. That night, at 10 in the morning, Jolie was led into the room. Then, a man in a bathrobe walked out of the bathroom. Jolie took off her coat in front of the strange man, revealing sexy lingerie underneath. She began to play a game of cat and mouse with the man, but just as he got a taste of sweetness, afterward, she calmly put on her coat, hooked the handle of her handbag onto an old lamp on the balcony, and leaped from the terrace hundreds of meters high. Her special handbag turned into a rope, allowing for an elegant and beautiful, smooth landing. Then she got into a taxi, and calmly left the scene. Meanwhile, Pitt also arrived at a bar. Pretending to look for the restroom, he entered a small private room, where a poker game was just about to start. Seeing that they were one player short, Pitt took a seat at the table. After a few rounds, Pitt became as close as brothers with the big guys. Just then, another person came in. The original three were waiting for him, and he was also Pitt's target for the night. He quickly drew the two guns from his waist, and in the blink of an eye, took out all four men. Jolie arrived home first. Just as she took off her coat, Pitt returned. She quickly hid behind the wardrobe. Luckily, Pitt didn't come over. Late at night, they both received calls from their organizations for a mission. Just like always, they coincidentally hid the truth from each other. Jolie lied that her father was sick and she needed to go home for a few days. Pitt, on the other hand, said there was a problem with a construction project, and he needed to go on a business trip to solve it. The next morning, Pitt pulled his suitcase to the utility shed in the corner of the yard. It turned out, underneath was Pitt's secret armory. Inside, not only were various weapons and ammunition neatly arranged, but even the cash needed for operations was piled up like a small mountain. And as soon as Pitt left, Jolie, who was supposed to be asleep, quickly got up. She then went to the kitchen, entered the password for the oven, and the next second, a small arsenal filled with various guns and knives automatically unfolded. At this time, Pitt had already arrived at his office and was reviewing the specific details of the operation. The target was a Mexican dealer named Tank. Meanwhile, Jolie, who had also arrived at her office, received the same assassination order. But strangely enough, her target was the same person as Pitt's, because Tank would be escorted by the FBI from Mexico into the United States. The desert highway on the US-Mexico border was the best place to carry out the assassination. Soon, Jolie arrived at the designated location ahead of time. On the convoy's paths, she planted high explosive bombs in advance. But just as she was casually lying in her observation post, waiting for the target to appear, Pitt suddenly drove a dune buggy into the minefield she had set up. Not only did he knock over a position sensor, but he also arrogantly released himself near the minefield. Due to the distance, Jolie didn't recognize who he was. She just thought he was an ordinary passerby and paid him no mind. At this moment, the convoy escorting Tank was about to reach the minefield, but then she suddenly noticed the passerby was now carrying a rocket launcher and walking towards her. Jolie instantly realized the other person was also an assassin, so she quickly raised her rifle to take him out. Fortunately, Pitt was wearing a bulletproof vest, which is how he luckily escaped. Realizing an enemy was lying in ambush, Pitt immediately returned fire. He raised his rocket launcher and aimed at Jolie's observation post. Unexpectedly, the explosion prematurely triggered the minefield's countdown. The target convoy hadn't even entered before the bombs went off, causing Pitt's assassination plan to completely fail. Back at the office, Pitt took the computer wreckage he found at the scene to a beautiful hacker for analysis, but after scanning the purchase information on the chip, he discovered the computer's shipping address was exactly the same as Jolie's company address. Thinking back to the female assassin's silhouette as she fled, Pitt suddenly had a bad feeling. At the same time, Jolie also realized the male assassin's movements and posture were extremely similar to her husband Pitt's. Just like that, the secret they had hidden from each other for 6 years was instantly on the verge of being exposed. So that evening, the two, having returned home, began to test each other in various ways. Although she was being lovey-dovey with her words, the moment Jolie turned around, she immediately poured out all the wine. Then, the female assassin from before started drinking. When she tasted a salty flavor, she immediately poured out all the wine. Then, as soon as they sat at the dinner table, cautious Pitt quietly hid a dinner knife. But unexpectedly, Jolie then brought out an even bigger one. This scared Pitt so much that he quickly stood up and took on the job of cutting the meat. But before he finished cutting, Jolie pulled out another long knife from her waist, and the steak Jolie made herself gave her trouble. Although she was tense, she dared not swallow the piece of beef in her mouth. Finally, she used the excuse of going to the bathroom to spit it out. Then Pitt began to take the initiative. He picked up a wine bottle, poured a glass of red wine for Jolie, and then, while she wasn't looking, he dropped the bottle. Just a subconscious action was enough to confirm Pitt's suspicion. Although Jolie reacted quickly and immediately dropped the wine glass, it was already too late. Pitt quickly grabbed a pistol from the study, while Jolie got in her car and sped away from the house. Seeing this, Pitt immediately rushed out. He wanted to explain things to Jolie face to face. He was a step too late, so he kept taking shortcuts to try and intercept her. Unexpectedly, because he bumped into Jolie, his gun accidentally went off, and the bullet, without deviation, hit Jolie's windshield. This instantly angered Jolie, who had just been feeling conflicted. She floored the gas and rammed directly into Pitt, who was trying to explain. But even so, Pitt was still trying to explain to Jolie. But Jolie, in her anger, wouldn't listen. So Pitt had no choice but to break the window and climb into the car. Unexpectedly, the next second, Jolie jumped out of the car. That night, with nowhere to go, Pitt went to a colleague's house, while Jolie returned to her office. The two tossed and turned, unable to sleep. This was destined to be a sleepless night. The next morning, Jolie brought a group of subordinates and conducted a thorough search of the house. When Pitt returned home, he found that his secret army had been completely looted. Furious enough to spit blood, Pitt punched and kicked the air. Since his wife had already made the first move, he had to respond. So, he secretly infiltrated Jolie's office building. Unexpectedly, the alarm system detected his arrival immediately. Jolie, without a word, trapped him in the elevator and threatened Pitt to leave the city. Otherwise, she would detonate the bomb in the elevator. But Pitt didn't believe his wife would do it. He even teased her, saying to hit is to show affection, to scold is to show love. Jolie had only intended to argue with Pitt, but unexpectedly, her subordinate detonated the bomb. The explosion was even from the bomb in the elevator. Then light chased her body. By the time Jolie rushed to check, the scene was already in ruins. She thought she had really blown Pitt up. That evening, Jolie went alone to the hotel where Pitt had proposed to her. Tears had already soaked her cheeks. Just as Jolie was sadly reminiscing about the little moments between them, a pair of familiar hands refilled her wine glass. Jolie, who had been secretly grieving, instantly beamed with joy. It turned out, Pitt had already anticipated Jolie's move. He had hijacked the elevator's surveillance footage one step ahead, and was talking to his wife from another elevator. Just then, Pitt invited Jolie to dance with him, and the two began a new round of testing each other. With a feint, Pitt disarmed the throwing knife from Jolie's thigh, and Jolie was no less impressive, immediately disarming the pistol from Pitt's ankle in return. Then the two began to discuss the reasons for their failed marriage. Both felt the other was using the marriage. At this point, Jolie suddenly said she had to go to the restroom, but Pitt knew it wasn't that simple. Sure enough, as soon as Jolie entered the restroom, there was an explosion. But just as Pitt was about to go upstairs to look for her, Jolie had already blended into the crowd and coolly left the scene. When Pitt quickly rushed outside, he heard the ticking of a bomb on his body, so he immediately took off his jacket and threw it into a trash can. The next second, the trash can exploded, but he was trapped by the crowd on one side. He heard the ticking of a bomb on his body, so he immediately took off his jacket and threw it into a trash can. The next second, the trash can exploded. It seemed Jolie really wanted to kill him. Furious, Pitt immediately borrowed a car and sped towards home. Soon, Pitt arrived at his doorstep, but unexpectedly, Jolie started firing. Then she rushed into the garage first. Off to a bad start, Pitt had to abandon the car and sneak into the backyard. Unexpectedly, Jolie was already waiting at the door with a rifle. Pitt had no choice but to find another way. He carefully broke a second-floor window, and after making sure no one was there, he quietly slipped into the house. Then he took out a pistol hidden behind a painting, and began searching every corner of the room. Cautiously, he used a mirror to check the blind spot of the stairs. Unexpectedly, he was almost blown away by Jolie. Pitt pretended to be injured, then quickly got up and counter-attacked. Jolie nimbly dodged the attack, and immediately opened fire with her shotgun. Unexpectedly, Pitt easily dodged all of it. At this point, Jolie showed no mercy, spraying the house with bullets, forcing Pitt to hastily take cover. He dove into the kitchen, using the double-door refrigerator as a shield, and easily blocked all of Jolie's bullets. Seeing he was out of ammo, he opened a drawer, pulled out a kitchen knife, and threw it hard at Jolie. Then he ripped off the gas line. Jolie, having reloaded, once again fired wildly into the kitchen, but she had fallen right into his trap. The powerful explosion sent her flying. Before she could recover, Pitt rushed out, and the two began to fight hand to hand. One would think Pitt, with his physical advantage, would dominate, but Jolie fought dirty and used props, leaving Pitt dizzy and seeing stars. The two fought for dozens of rounds, but neither could get the upper hand. At the crucial moment, they both picked up guns from the floor at almost the same time, but after a moment of eye contact, Pitt, unable to bring himself to do it, was the first to lower his weapon. Looking at a teary-eyed Jolie, Pitt pushed her gun away. Then the two kissed passionately. A deep and intimate session of hand-to-hand combat began again. Not long after, the neighbors, hearing the sounds of war next door, brought police officers to knock on the door. The exhausted couple opened the door. The next morning, the couple, after a night of battle, were about to eat something to regain their energy when, suddenly, several smoke grenades came crashing through the window. It turned out both of their organizations had only given them 48 hours to eliminate each other. Since neither had completed the mission, they sent a large number of assassins to clean house. At this point, the couple, already out of ammo, had no choice but to quickly hide in the basement. But the other side fought dirty, sending a robot to throw a bomb into the basement. Seeing this, Pitt kicked it away, but he kicked the bomb right onto the gasoline barrels. Seeing things were bad, the two had to fight their way out, and the already dilapidated house was now completely destroyed. Afterward, Pitt secretly borrowed the neighbor's new car, and they quickly fled the scene. But just as they got on the highway, a second wave of assassins caught up, so the two quickly switched places, and Pitt, now free to act, immediately counter-attacked. While reloading, Pitt suddenly confessed to Jolie that he had been married once before. Hearing this, Jolie was instantly furious and slammed on the brakes. This is something no woman can forgive. Just then, the assassin in the other car climbed out of the sunroof. Seeing this, Pitt swung a golf club and knocked him out. Then he pulled the pin on the grenade on the man's belt. Jolie cooperated by quickly accelerating away. The man and his car were instantly turned to ash, but two cars were still in hot pursuit, and Pitt's aim was so bad he couldn't hit anything. Unable to watch anymore, Jolie executed a perfect drift, then aimed at the oncoming enemy and fired a direct hit. Afterward, the two found Pitt's colleague Eddie to ask for help. Eddie suggested they split up and flee, saying it was their only chance of survival, or they could find the dealer tank, whom both organizations were after, and maybe they could be forgiven for their past failures. So Jolie contacted her former female assistant. With her help, they successfully located where tank was being held. Then the couple began their first collaboration of their assassin careers. Although they were both top assassins in their respective organizations, their working styles were completely different. This meant there was absolutely no chemistry between them. But relying on their individual, superb combat experience, the two still managed to rescue Tank from the heavily guarded cell. But after some interrogation, they discovered this so-called big-time dealer was just a rookie who had recently joined the assassin organization, and he was just being put out by the two organizations. Pitt and Jolie were their real targets. It turned out that a few months ago, bosses of the two organizations accidentally discovered that the respective ace assassins had already married each other, so they teamed up and devised this elimination plan, assigning them the same assassination target, hoping they would kill each other without knowing. But unexpectedly, the plan failed. Just then, Pitt also found on Tank's belt a tracking device. At the same time, a large group of men in black had already arrived outside the motel. But when the assassins broke into the room, they found that Pitt and the others were already gone. It turned out the two had hidden in the nearby sewer system, which is how they escaped. They knew very well that just hiding would only lead to being picked off, so the two decided to fight for their lives. Perhaps there was still a glimmer of hope. Afterward, they snuck into the supermarket next door for a final showdown with the organization. They put on bulletproof vests, organized the gear they were carrying, and then used the terrain to gradually take out the lone assassins. Jolie, skilled with throwing knives, pushed a shopping cart, taking out several assassins with one knife each. But her last throw hit Pitt in the leg. His wife apologized, so he couldn't say much. He could only silently pull out the fruit knife and continue on. But as he turned, his injured leg accidentally knocked over a pile of cans, making a lot of noise. Finally, with their perfect cooperation, their position was completely exposed. Then, countless bullets rained down on them, like a downpour. They could only fight and retreat, using the terrain to continue their standoff with the assassins. It moved along the edge to draw enemy fire, while Jolie climbed onto a shelf to snipe the assassins from a distance. But soon her position was discovered by the enemy. Intense suppressive fire knocked her down. Seeing this, Pitt rushed to her rescue. He helped Jolie up, fighting and retreating, but there were too many assassins. Soon they were cornered in a warehouse. Fortunately, both were wearing bulletproof vests, and didn't suffer any fatal injuries. Looking at the increasing number of assassins outside, it seemed they might die here this time. But the two weren't scared at all. Instead, they laughed. Perhaps dying with the one you love is a good choice too. This moment, they no longer had any fear or regret. The two of them rushed out of the room together. In a moment of life and death, the couple seemed to be telepathically linked, their coordination becoming increasingly seamless. The two chose to watch each other's backs, forming a perfect formation with no blind spots. They surrounded and attacked all the assassins to protect their beloved. No matter how fierce the enemy's fire was, they did not flinch in the slightest. They successfully eliminated all the assassins. The two also took the opportunity to merge their two organizations and established a brand new assassin agency, and so began their wild and happy life together.